Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of Icetime TV Unplugged, the off-season show that is ruling the roost over all of the off-season rumours, news, and looking forward to when our beloved ice hockey finally returns here in the UK. Thank you so much for all your positive feedback from episode 1 and for tuning in and watching and commenting. It's very much appreciated. It's a little labour of love for us to catch up here and to give you all a bit of entertainment as we navigate these very uncharted waters. So we're delighted to be back here for episode 2. And joining me today is Charlie. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. Not really much to update on because I've not been doing much, but yeah.
I hope last episode didn't ruin your reputation too much. I do apologise, but
only a little bit. Had a couple of tweets.
And also joining me is my main man, Dan. Dan, how are you?
Yeah, very well. As Charlie said, not much change from last time, but still missing hockey, still missing work. So yeah, not too bad.
And of course, we have Rachel. Rachel, how the devil are you?
I'm good, surviving as always. Yeah, and like the others, there's really not much to say. No work, just carrying on with uni. Really, that's about it.
What is that red devil shirt behind you? Where is that from?
The red one, it's actually my mum's old shirt. So she was part of the support of like the original supporters club, and they all had a personalised jersey made for them.
That is rare. I don't think I've ever seen that one before. Good catch. I like that. I like that a lot. And the laurel to my hardy, Mr. Ollie Hampson. Ollie, new rig this week. I like the new rig. How are you?
I'm very well, yeah. I thought I'd just move the room around a little bit because of the window not having a blind, so it just glared off the screen. Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm still working from home, so I can't really complain. Still, in a job for the next couple of months before I depart to go back to uni.
We'll hear lots about that in the coming weeks, I am sure. Well, gang, since we've all been together, we finally had some positive signing news from the Devils, and everyone was delighted to see that last season's MVP, top scorer and all-round good guy, Joey Haddad, has returned to the roster for this upcoming season, and we're going to take a quick break here as Ollie was lucky enough to catch up with Joey, and this is what he had to say about him coming back to the Devils.
So I'm sure I'm not the only person who's going to be delighted to welcome you back, but welcome back for 7th season, Joey Haddad.
Thanks a lot, Ollie.
That's no problem at all. So how are you doing anyway? How have you been?
Doing good, yeah, I've been good. Me and my wife are here in Cardiff, obviously. Family's safe back home. We're doing all right. The wife's working from home a little bit in the clinic. Me, I'm just trying to keep the mind occupied, get some workouts in, and start getting ready for the upcoming season, I guess, whenever it starts.
So thinking back to your first season, 2014, did you ever think when you arrived for that first time in the Big Blue tent that 7 seasons later you'd still be in town?
I don't think. I mean, I don't know if I really thought about it. Like when I first came here, I was just kind of, trying something new. I knew Coach Andrew Lord. I knew there was new owners and a new GM. And I knew a couple players who played here previous years, Stuart McRae. And so me and my buddy Chris Culligan came over, and it's just been such a good time. The team takes such good care of you, and from the fans to the office staff, and just meeting some new friends over here. It's really been a place I'm proud to have been for 6 seasons, and looking forward to 7.
And season 6 as well was a huge one for yourself. 29 goals in league play, 36 overall. Coming off the back of the season before where you had those injuries, you missed the playoffs. What did you do differently in the offseason to come into last year and be so impactful?
I think I talked a little bit about it, but I had great help from my medical team. Jay Parsons, Urjan from Osteo Relief, and my wife's boss, Ben Matthew, chiropractor. And, I just went out in the community and I really sourced out, what I needed to get done. And those guys helped me a lot with recovery. And Dan Forbes, our past strength and conditioning coach, he helped me, strengthen, the leg back up. And it was just really a group effort. My coach helped me with a lot of things with his connections back in Canada. I talked to everybody I could, and it was a really weird injury, being a nerve injury last year. And, it's not something you just kind of put back together like a broken bone or something like that. It was took a little bit of a different approach, but I think the biggest thing last summer to previous summers was just the approach I went at it. Worked hard all year. We had a good group of guys here. So we had a good little community put together, and it turned out well.
Now, obviously, the way that the season ended, going into your seventh season, unfinished business to go after not being able to pick up that league title. How excited are you for next season now?
Yeah, I think hopefully all this kind of settles down the right way, and I'd like to see our team back next year. As far as I know Benty retired, and a couple other players and stuff like that. Just who knows what's going to happen. Nobody got to talk or chat to anybody at the end of the year because we were all getting out of here. But I'd like to think, we'll have a good chunk of the team back next year to, kind of finish what we didn't get to this year. So.
Well, anyway, thank you very much for taking the time to have a chat with us, and best of luck for the rest of the off-season. Hopefully see you in a couple of months.
Awesome. Thanks, Ollie.
You're
Good
welcome.
talking to you.
That was Ollie talking to Joey Haddad. And Ollie, what kind of vibes were you getting from Haddad in the little preamble chat that you would have had with him before that interview took place?
It was actually quite weird because I was on my lunch break, so I was trying to get it done as quickly as possible so I could go back to work. And Dan, our producer, sent him the wrong Zoom password, so it took longer than expected. But no, I just kind of got the vibe that he's just really, really thrilled to be back. He loves playing here in Cardiff. He's quite happy and settled. I think he's just one of those players who year on year just turns up, does a great job. And last season was just absolutely phenomenal for him. But I think the thing with him as well is he does fly under the radar a little bit because he's always had like Joey Martin, Andrew Hotham, Fournier, Langley last year as well, which kind of doesn't put him at the center of attention. But last year he was put at the center of attention because of injuries to Martin and just absolutely thrived.
He did indeed. What do you think, Rach, I come to you for this one. What do you think is the biggest asset that Dad is bringing with this re-signing coming to next season?
Oh gosh, that's a very good question.
That's what I'm here for.
I think it's kind of a sense of security, really. He was such a big person on the ice and made such an impact. And just having that one big signing is probably a really big reassurance for Devils fans and the Devils themselves to have such a big body, professional body, and a very highly skilled body back for whatever next season brings. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Dan, I'm going to come to you on this point. Ollie made a good point there in regards to Haddad flying under the radar. Can teams afford to not pinpoint him next season? And how do you think the Devils are going to utilize Haddad next year? Is it a top line situation, or are they still going to try and activate him as kind of this 1-2 punch with if Joey Martin returns, Joey Martin or another top center?
Yeah, I think he definitely did fly under the radar, and I think part of the reason for that was obviously because he missed such a big chunk of the season before. Perhaps when he came back, everyone was expecting him to maybe not be back to his best. But he, straight out of the gates, you could tell he'd been dying to play hockey for months and months and months and months. And I think that really did help him come on that last season. Then teams just underestimated him and forgot maybe how much of an impact he can be. And going maybe on to your second question, then how are we going to use him next year? I think with Haddad, you've got a kind of player that he can play top line, he can play second line, he can play with Martin, he can play on more of a grinder line. He's so, useful in so many different ways that you can utilize him however you want. If you want him to be the goal scorer he was last year, then we've seen he can be that good. But if you want him to be sort of, a player you put out there to grind down the minutes at the end of a game when we've got a 1-goal lead, he can also be that as well. So, like I said, really easy to utilize and really good guy in the room from what we've heard. There is no downside to this re-signing, I don't think.
No, I have not seen one negative comment on social media, which is a rarity in and of itself. Charlie, simple question to you. Can Joey Haddad be as good this next season as he was in this past one?
Oh, definitely. I think, yeah, definitely for sure. Going back to what Dan said, I think it's would be really easy for us to celebrate Joey Haddad, the goal scorer, right now, but he has other aspects to his game which are also really good as well, and that fact that you can utilize him in whatever situation and he'll go out and do a great job is really vital. I think that's why he's such a good signing for us, and that he can go out and score those goals, but he has good physical play as well. So I really enjoy watching Joey Haddad play. It's just phenomenal, I think. And yeah, like you said, no negative comments at all. It's quite hard to be negative about him coming back, really, isn't it? Because he's done such a good job for us the last few years. So yeah, I think he'll come back next year and kind of do it again, to be honest.
I'll just throw a few questions out for anyone to latch on to here, really. Is there an argument to be made that he is the best all-rounder in the Elite League this past year? Who could rival him?
I would definitely say he was the best all-round player on the Devils team this year. I think in terms of all-round game, him, Sam Herr would be up there as well for me. He's definitely one of the better 200-foot players. I think he's probably the most dynamic player for the Devils because he does so much. He can score goals, he can set up plays, he can make hits, but it's his strength in the corners that really set him apart from absolutely everyone in the league, which is what I think is the biggest part of his game and probably the bit that's the most important. Especially when you're down late in games, you in the third period, legs are tired. He's still got that energy, still got that strength, and he can still pull off some unbelievable moves. So I think overall, if he's not the most dynamic, he's definitely one of them in the entire league over the last few seasons.
I remember Steve King when he came over, when all four of the owners came over for the games earlier this year. He did a Q&A before the game, and he said that Joey Haddad's puck retention skills are that of an NHL player. And I think it's difficult, really, to obviously, that comes with a big label. But the guy clearly has been able to use that so many times, and he's seen so well among the owners and stuff. He's just so good, and I think we're all very happy to have him back. And Steve King, again, was tweeting his praises when we announced him. And he has that good relationship with those owners and with Andrew Lord and with Todd Kelman. So, like Ollie said, dynamically, he is one of the best in the league. And there is very few others who can do what he does on a game night, I don't think.
How do we think this is going to affect the mentality of recruitment in the sense of Haddad has added a lot more goals to his game in this past year? Will that have more of an effect on how the Devils recruit in this summer? Do they go maybe for a bit more of a grinder type now, in sense that you don't need Haddad to do as much of that dirty work? Is there more goals to supplement what Haddad brings? Do you think that the way Haddad has changed his game will maybe affect the general makeup of the Devils recruitment going forward?
I don't think so, really. I think it'd be more business as usual for them. You think the Devils, since Andrew Lord come in, they rarely, I think there's only once they've had a player finish with over 30 goals in a league campaign. I think that was last year. Joey Martin. Haddad would have done it this season. But I don't think it really changes too much. I think as long as they have a steady centre for him, someone like Martin, if he's going to play with that. Another guy who I liked him with was Mike McNamee. I think those two worked really well. If they can get a decent centre for him and also just a complementary winger who can score themselves or just set up the play and slow the tempo down when needs to be. Someone who can really match up strength-wise with Haddad, then that's all they really need to do. Other than that, I don't think there's going to be too much changing in terms of the way they, construct next season's team.
Yeah, I don't think, you have a good start with Haddad, and I think if you build a good group, not around him, but with him, I think they could create something even better than we had last year. But I don't think they have to change the way they recruit. I think you just have to build upon it.
Ollie, just coming back to a point that you made there about the centre, you didn't mention Stephen Dixon in that. Would you, provided Dixon returned, of course, you would split that little 1-2 punch up?
Yeah, I think that Dixon, him and Haddad, they had the Dixon-Haddad Langley line at some points this season, which worked really well. But I think for me, with the goals that Haddad brought in, I think he's more suited to play up with Martin or McNamee, for example. Dixon, I think you need him to be a bit more on that energy line. They're going to provide some goals, I think, but I think Haddad's going to play a bigger role than that. No disrespect to Dixon, of course, but I just think that those two, though they would work well, I would probably split them.
And the most important point here is, are we going to manage to sign someone with the same syllables as Bentivoglio to keep the song intact?
You'd hope so. You'd hope so.
Who would be out there that we could sign like that? Does anyone know any?
I mean, that is a scour for elite prospects, isn't it? To find a hockey player in their prime right now, able to come to the Elite League that has the exact same cadence of the song. So that is all of your homework for this coming week.
We'll come up with someone.
Just a kind of last word on a dad signing then. For me, one of the most important aspects of this signing is I genuinely think with the way that the player market will likely shake out this summer, the team that retains the most re-signings and the biggest core from this year will have a huge head start in this campaign. So I don't know if anyone wants to make any further points on that, but I think that is the big thing for me, the big takeaway for me. And I saw Guildford have made a couple of re-signings as well. And I think any team that can keep, as I say, that core of guys together from the previous season is going to have a really big advantage in the title race when we finally get to face off.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you look at Ferrara is back in Coventry again this year, and like you said, Dunbar's going to be back in Guildford. If all the every team in the league can bring back sort of your top line or your big defenseman or your goalie, it's going to go so far towards your success. For example, if Sheffield bring back that line of DeLuca, Valorant, and Connolly, I mean that thing was tearing things up at times last year. That's going to be a huge asset to them. So yeah, I think retention, and especially with the environment we're in at the minute, I think a lot of players will be inclined to re-sign places. Sort of look at it and go, maybe I don't want to take the risk of going somewhere else, and maybe whatever happens in terms of COVID-19 and stuff. So I think there's a good chance that a lot of teams can bring back their players, and I think the Devils, as they've proven in the past, will.
Okay, guys. So before we take a quick break here, any speculation as to the next Devil signing?
This early on, I got to figure it's going to be a re-signing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if Bounds is back, it's not going to be him. They'll drag that out as long as they possibly can.
The Riley of 2020.
I mean, I'd like to see Fournier back. That would be a nice one to get us going. I mean, having Haddad and Fournier back in 2 weeks that'd be a nice start to the summer recruitment.
Oh. I don't know if you can pinpoint. I cannot say who could be back because I want all of them back. We had such a great team last year. I literally cannot pinpoint who the club would think to reveal as one of the top 5, whatever they reveal first either, because there were so many essential players in our team. I don't know who you decide to throw out next.
Have you got a want?
Oh God. I don't know.
I was just about to ask that.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, come on. You know, this is a place of, you know, firm decision. Right, you need to nail those colours to mast.
I'd love it. It's not going to be. I'd love it to be a double signing of Duggan and Mosey.
See, and you ended up being greedy. Is anything wrong with
I know, exactly. Never asked me for one.
that?
Who's everyone else's player they want it to be?
For me, it'll always be Joey Martin. Until Joey Martin is signed, sealed, and delivered, I will continue to be a very nervous Devils fan.
Yeah, Rach kind of stole it from me a little bit, but Mosey, I really want back, because those last games where he actually got to play, and I was just so excited to watch him play. Every single shift, he just gave it so much. You could tell he was just so excited to be playing again. And I think if we had more of that next season, he could really put some serious points on the board. So yeah, that's the player I'd love to see back.
I think maybe adding to that slightly, there was a point last year where we were speaking to Andrew Lord, and he said that he was so excited to have Mosey back because he was the only one who could keep up with Joey Martin, which is good. So and we saw how effective those two were together towards the end of the year. For me as well, I quite like to. Maybe it is unlikely, but I'd like to see Jardine back. I think the work he was doing at the end of the year, he was, you know, probably our best defensive defenseman at least, and him back would be lovely, no matter how unlikely it may be.
Yeah, that would be the one I'd go for as well, Sam Jardine. Obviously, I'll make no apologies. I was a huge fan of his last year, so I would love to have a second year of it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think you know, he would have a much quicker start being adapted to the more ice time that he got as well, and someone who, I totally agree, grew and grew as the season went on.
Well, he was on a podcast which I listened to recently as well, and he was saying how when he signed over here, everyone he knew back home was gearing up for their, you know, training camps whilst he was in the thick of a season. He wasn't sure if he'd made the right choice, but as the season went on, he got a lot more comfortable. So I think, you know, coming over for a second year, knowing exactly what to expect, he would just hit the ground running.
Yeah, and I think even from like talking to people around the rink as well, there were a lot of people who maybe because of that reason weren't initially that fussed on Jardine as well. And then there kind of came a moment in the season where everyone was like, this guy's good, we need to keep him.
He hit that point that I think he was just comfortable with what he was doing. He knew exactly what to expect, and he'd got into like the rhythm of things. And from that point on, he kind of stood his ground and proved that he deserved to be here, and proved that he was probably one of the better players on our team as well.
Absolutely. So thank you guys. That was, you know, Joey Haddad re-signing and a few offshoot conversations. From that, we're going to take a short break now as you're going to hear some words from our lovely sponsors. thank you as ever for the support for Icetime TV Unplugged. If you would like your business to be profiled on the show with us, and you'd like us to give you a shout out and tell everyone what you do, please get in touch, marketing@icetime.tv, and we'll work with you to get a clip set up, and we will give you some exposure here on the show. So moving on to more league-wide issues, Todd Kelman recently did a Twitter Q&A, and one of the questions that was posed to him was about the possibility of the season starting with behind closed door games. And he was pretty unequivocal in his response, saying that that is a complete no-go for the league. That will not happen. And he went into the reasons why. So we'll come to you first, Dan. Does it make sense for you, Todd's reply?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, I wouldn't dare, but it's difficult to argue with Todd. The league itself is obviously so based on ticket sales and people coming through the door and bums on seats. You wouldn't risk that, and especially for the sort of teams down the lower end, you wouldn't risk it just to get hockey going again. I mean, in my heart, I was kind of hoping there might be a chance that would happen, so we could actually see some kind of hockey again. But like I said, you wouldn't want to risk, a Dundee or a Manchester or a Fife. Teams do have obviously much smaller crowds. You don't want to risk them losing out huge amounts of their revenue on getting hockey going again too early. And the Elite League will be ready. And when the time comes, we will get going again. It just obviously might be a while away. So I mean, it's, like I said, difficult to argue, but you've got to agree with what he said.
Charlie, how do you assess the current situation in regards to planning for kind of the unknown going into October as we stand right now?
Yeah, it's always quite difficult really planning for a time we don't know what it's going to look like. So, you kind of hear a lot of things from everything will be back to normal in October to, still might be going into next year where we see kind of sports returning, which is quite a scary thought really. But, it is really difficult. And I think, especially for us, we would love to kind of see the games put back on. We could be broadcasting it again, but there's a lot of teams that won't work for. And even for the Devils, it wouldn't even generate near enough as an actual game with bums on seats would. So it's really difficult. And but the most important thing is just kind of come back when the time is ready to as well. Even if it means that the league is shortened next season, whether it's, a 2 games away, 2 games home versus each team, or even one, at least kind of getting a league going. And I think that'd be the most important thing, and making sure games are played when it's ready. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I wouldn't want to be in the room making the decisions on it either, because kind of got to be ready for when it comes back, while not knowing when it's going to come back. So,
Rach, maybe the further issue is going to be the fact that all 4 nations are represented, and all 4 nations will have different rules and regulations, as we've seen, in the general population. That does create further headaches for the league, doesn't it?
Just a tad. Like we saw how chaotic it got generally with different rules and regulations in the news. So having it in sport, I think what the league really need to do is kind of come to a general consensus and be like, we understand that this is what the government says, but we need a way that works for everyone, a way that works for all the clubs in our league as well, and it's beneficial to them. Because as Charlie and Dan said, each club has different financial incomes, and the only way to do it is through getting bums on seats. And everyone's like, why can't you stream it behind closed doors? The clubs won't make enough to kind of survive, and that's the thing that's kind of sad about our league. But it works for us when coronavirus isn't around. But I think, back to your point, Gaz, is everyone needs to come to a mutual agreement, no matter what all the four nations are saying. The league itself needs to kind of make the decision what's the safest option for the clubs and their fans, and what's the better way for it to work in general. And I think that's a really tough discussion to have, really, between all 10 teams.
Absolutely, completely agree with that. Ollie, if, say, maybe they go for a few friendlies before, behind closed doors, before the season begins in earnest. I know you, like myself, were glued to the Bundesliga this weekend upon its return, and a successful return, thankfully, it was. From a spectacle point of view, how did you kind of assess the behind closed doors atmosphere and presentation that you saw from the Bundesliga this past weekend?
I think the first thing is the commentators for those games. I've got to give them credit. They were commentating those games from their own houses, and they did a great job. So you've got to give them credit for that. It was weird, though. Without fans, it's necessary. Just put it in perspective, it's necessary for the Bundesliga and the second Bundesliga to continue because that TV deal is so lucrative. I think it was I read there's 13 out of 36 clubs would face liquidity problems if they didn't complete the season. So if a league like that is going to run into issues, then ours is definitely going to run into issues. I think behind closed doors, it would work for fans because they'd just be so happy to have hockey back, but it just wouldn't work financially for clubs. If you look at it from ticket sales, say for example there's £18 an adult, £10 a kid. The modern nuclear family, they go to a game, that's 56 quid. That family's going to buy one stream. It's a tenner if you get it from us, because we're the only ones who didn't increase our prices. But I think there's going to be an appetite from the fans for it to happen, but I think a lot of fans are going to know that it won't be the same. Not every club does a stream yet either. Some are on about doing it now, which is good. But I just think it wouldn't be the same because not every stream would be the same. It's not an easy job to do. It's not as simple as turning up and just setting a camera up with a microphone and press and record. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and I just don't see it working at all.
You touched on something there, Ollie, about teams and webcasting in Glasgow. Gave quite a big update on their plans moving forward. They're going to introduce webcasting, which is a big boost for them and for webcasting in general. It'll be good to have the team there produce their content. They also said that they're not going to commit to selling season tickets yet during the uncertainty. Quite a novel approach from Glasgow. Does anyone have any takes on Gareth Chalmers' latest update from up north?
I think you perhaps by not selling season tickets at this point, or at least setting up some kind of direct debit or some kind of system, you do risk missing out closer to the start of the year. The general ticket sales. Perhaps if you say we're not going to do it now, by the time we get around to October, November time, people might not be inclined as much to get season tickets. If it's been a while since they've seen hockey, they might just keep buying as they go and go into occasional games when they were interested at the end of the season, and that sort of they wanted to get one, and they've lost that momentum of kind of continue going to hockey and stuff like that. So I think it obviously it works in a sense of they're not going to offer anything up that might not happen, because obviously we don't know what's going to happen with the league. But I think it could, they could be a bit of a shot in the foot in terms of the future. So yeah, a bit of a risk.
Thinking of the wider implications of this and the way that teams are maybe going to have to present things on game nights and such, is it maybe how do I phrase this? Is it maybe a blessing in disguise that ice hockey maybe isn't a majority sport in the UK? It's a minority sport. Might the fact that there are smaller venues actually benefit the UK when government legislation comes in? There's talk in Germany, I believe 5,000 is the cut-off point for large gatherings that they're looking at for October. If the UK is to follow that kind of legislation? Might it be that ice hockey and the buildings that they have to play in finally become a little bit of a blessing?
I think so as well, but I think it'll be interesting because if you're going to have a mass gathering of 5,000 in a German football game, they've got stadiums of 15, 20,000. If you have a cap on 3,000 in Cardiff, you're basically having everyone sat next to each other. So would it be a cap of 3,000 and you can sit next to each other, or a cap of 3,000 and you've got to be spaced out a bit? It'll be interesting, to say the least, to see exactly how the season starts and when, I guess.
And how do we think this is going to affect recruitment across the league?
I think quite big. It's going to be difficult to kind of convince an import to start a career in Europe, or even from just another country to come and play in the elite league. I think even maybe for imports that have gone home over the summer, it might be a bit more difficult to convince them to come back to the UK if there is still any kind of situation going on. So that is a worry for me. I'm hoping that kind of we retain as many imports as we can. But that was when it kind of first had thoughts of hockey returning, that was kind of one of my first big thoughts, was how are we going to convince the 150 odd imports to come back to the UK, if they're living elsewhere.
Necessity is the mother of invention, of course. Might we see certain teams maybe take a bigger gamble on some British players to maybe plug those gaps further on down the lines? Might this be a big chance for a few prospects to maybe grab that brass ring and be given opportunities that maybe they wouldn't normally be given?
I think if that is the case, it's a great chance for up-and-coming British players to kind of show what they're made of. And it is a big jump for some elite league teams to make that jump, really. But I fully respect them. And if there is an issue with imports coming over, that is the only option. But it'll be great to see what top quality players Britain can produce, not only bringing imports over from abroad. I think it's a proper risky move if we do have that issue, but I think it's a great chance as well, just to show what Britain can make.
I think it could open teams' eyes to looking closer to home for the future. Not necessarily this season, but it might give teams a bit of a kick to invest in their own junior setups. That's another thing that Todd actually touched on. I don't know if you saw his response to that. It was actually a really open and honest response, based saying how he thinks the junior system should go forward. And I think that, in Cardiff, there is a lot of good young talent. The Cardiff Fire, they've got a few in their system that, with a bit of work could do something. Fife as well, they produce a lot of good young talent. There's loads up in Scotland. So I think that clubs may start looking a little bit closer to home to try and develop their next Brits. I don't see the value in taking a guy who's 17, for example, in Glasgow, Liam Stenton. He's got a big future. It's not right now, though. You don't need to be throwing him in the deep end and hope that he comes good. It's more a case that clubs need to look at who's around them, look at the teenage talent that they have, and start moulding them for the future rather than just throw them in and hope they do well.
I think as well, with respect, if we were to lose out on imports, the quality of hockey would drop. And I think the league itself has a responsibility to keep that level and keep growing. And I think it would be not a step backwards, but it wouldn't be particularly beneficial if obviously recruitment's going to be difficult, but if we did start looking a lot more at bringing younger players through straight away, I don't think that would be helpful for the league. Because you look at someone like Alex Graham in Sheffield, who was tearing it up in the junior leagues and then came up and was on the fourth line. And obviously that's normal, but you don't want to be in a position where players like that are being brought up too quickly. And obviously, because we've been a league that's always been quite import based, you don't want to then risk them saying, well, you've brought young players through whose careers perhaps haven't gone the way that they wanted to by bringing them through too quickly. And that sort of can be a detriment to the league, I think, in some ways.
I take your point there, Dan. Do you think though it will be more forgiven by fans given the circumstance?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It depends on who you talk to, and I mean, like, I'd quite like to see, if it means waiting a little longer, I'd like to see the Elite League going at full again, as opposed to us being at 80% and missing out on a few imports and that. And I'd rather wait and have the Elite League be at, like I said, full strength and continue to grow more than play at 80% and not see, those extra 2 imports come in and replace them with a young Brit who may or may not pan out, depending on how you look at it. Like, see, the jump between the EIHL and the Elite League is huge, and players struggle when they come up. I mean, you look at Tom's Rutkiss. I mean, he's made some really great steps, but he's still not at a level where he can play in the Elite League. And I think, like I said, it would be as a detriment to the league if we rushed it, maybe.
I think as well, teams have got to look at the bigger picture of British ice hockey in general. Team GB are doing really well. You've got some old guys on that team, Jonathan Phillips, Matthew Myers. Those are guys who are going to be stepping away in a few years' time. You need the Brits who are coming through to be ready to replace them to maintain this level. If you've suddenly got an influx of young Brits who were thrown in at the deep end and their careers stagnate because of it, then suddenly we're going to start falling back down to Division 2. So I think as a whole, the Elite League, it has a responsibility. So the clubs in the league itself are competitive, but they also need to think of British ice hockey in general, because that is something that goes hand in hand with raising the reputation in the league.
I think quite a few fans would be forgiving as well. As Dan said, if it had to be pushed back a bit, that you have to wait a little bit longer, they'd understand like the whole world is in the same situation as us. And I think especially long-time fans who've seen where the Elite League has come from, they'd rather wait to be at that same standard that we left at in March. I don't think anyone would want to take that away from the Elite League itself. They'd be willing to wait. If it's a few more months, it's a few more months. If it's a couple more weeks, it's a few weeks. They'd wait that amount of time to see the standard in which we left.
Ollie, I'm going to come back to a little point you made, just to throw something back at you. You're saying about the possibility of British players stagnating. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of a few players who were given opportunities because of a injury crisis or whatever. I'm thinking of Ben Davis, Stevie Lyle way back when, Alex Simmons, guys who did take that chance and maybe blossomed more because they were then more in a more professional environment and around better players. Do you think they're the exception when you're talking about players possibly stagnating? Do you think that we wouldn't find as many special talents as those three if players were to get a chance?
I think there would be players who would take the chance and run with it, and they would work out well, but there would be a lot that maybe they wouldn't reach the heights that we expect them to. They would potentially come in looking like a future second liner, and suddenly they're playing third line check-in minutes. I think that's the risk there. And I think a lot of it is the risk and reward factor. So if a player comes up and he, for example, if Alex Graham in Sheffield gets a lot of minutes next year, thrown in at the deep end and he works with it, great. If he doesn't, that's not so great, because that is a guy who is potentially the future face of GB hockey outside of Liam Kirk. So I think that you need to make sure that you're putting these kids in a situation where they are going to thrive. You need to know them individually as a coach as well to know if you can throw them in the deep end. But I just think there is too much risk, especially when it comes to goaltenders as well. Because you think about it, Bounds, he's getting close to 30. You need that next goaltender to come up in the next few years to really start pushing for that backup role and then start pushing for the starting role. So I think when it comes to goaltenders, that's where the biggest risk is.
Okay. 11 new points, guys. 11 new points. We can't continue this conversation without coming back to our beloved CHL that we spent so much time talking about last year. Rach, again, bigger legislation, but quarantine and coming into a different country, that could pose some issues for that competition as well.
I think that competition is probably a bit on the lines at the moment, because every country is coming out of quarantine at different times as well. So it's really difficult to kind of regulate it. And especially, and a few countries are saying that they are allowing British tourists back in the next coming months. But even hosting a sporting event in a different country, I think trying to regulate that, especially if you're traveling with the CHL, 2 different countries, if they have 2 different rules, what are you meant to do then? Like, it's a bit difficult. So I really don't know what's going to happen with the CHL. I think that's an even tougher discussion than the Elite League has to have, really. You have to coordinate with so many different countries, so many different venues, and you have to think about all the different guidelines and rules. I think that's a proper tough one at the moment. I don't really know what's going to happen. I couldn't even take a guess at what would happen.
I won't make you any colours to the mast on this one. Okay, we don't want to end too much on a negative note, of course. Charlie, what are you most looking forward to when hockey is back? What is it that you're yearning for when it comes to going back to the Viola Arena on game day?
Seeing you guys, of course.
Well, that was a given.
Pleasing your crowd, Charles.
Right, I've got that out of the way now. No, I think just kind of seeing everyone back at the rink is a big one, and just kind of hearing that crowd again, and that roar when the Devils come out for the first time, I think is going to be quite significant. Same with all clubs, really. I think, I think it's just going to be big homecoming for everyone. I think people will just be so glad to see friends, and there's kind of lots of different groups of hockey friends you have as well, and that you don't see anywhere else but the hockey. So yeah, I'm really excited to get back to it, and kind of it's one of the things that keep me going through this, to be honest. Especially as I'm at the rink quite a lot as well, doing different things. And I think that'll be the same for a lot of people, just having a pint with your mates again and watching some hockey. I think that's unbeatable, really. That's why we love the sport.
Anyone else? What are we all looking forward to?
I think the moment that first goal goes in, I don't really care who scores it. It could be Bouncy for all I care. The moment that goal goes in and
well, that'd be a moment in and of itself, Dan.
Well,
COVID or no COVID, Bouncy can fire one in.
But yeah, the moment that goal goes in and everyone sort of calms down and goes, right, we're back now. This is it. Let's get going. For me, that's gonna be great, and everyone on their feet and enjoying again. That's what I'm really desperate for.
I think I'm just excited for it all to come back. Hockey is such a big part of my life, and I haven't had a year where it hasn't been either. I've always kind of built everything around hockey. When I was younger, all my sports revolved around when a game was going to happen, which is kind of sad, but yeah.
Oh no.
But it's honestly, I'm so excited for the social aspect. As Charlie said, there are some people you don't see other than the hockey, and we've made so many friends there as well. It's just seeing them, having the whole atmosphere back, having the sport back itself. I'm just excited for the whole thing, and us getting back to work as well. I actually miss working every single game. So yeah, I think, I can't really pinpoint one thing. It's everything in a bundle because it's such a big part of my life.
Ollie?
I think the same there. What Ray touched on. I'm looking forward to getting back to work, getting back to being up on the gantry with you guys calling the game. It's a bit of a weird time. I've got a lot of creative ideas right now about what I want to do with, potential video ideas for sports, but there's nothing that I can do about it at the moment. So I've got a creative buzz going at the wrong time. But I'm really looking forward to just everything coming back to normal. Just, being at the rink, seeing people, like everyone said, having a couple of drinks with everyone. And I think that first game back for every team, that first home game, is just going to be a celebration.
Yeah, I've got a very specific time in a game which I look forward to every game day. But on your point there, the first game back, just after the anthems take place and the teams are in their huddle, that's kind of the time where we're sort of doing our ramp up of what the game means and what it entails, and the story that I try to lay out before it begins. And as the huddle finishes and the teams kind of send their starting lineups out, I always kind of instantly know at that point whether the crowd's in it or not. You can kind of feel the anticipation of whether the crowd is going to be flat or whether they're going to be sort of on point. And I think that is the time that I always kind of tune into the game the most. And on that first game back, that's the time that I'm really going to look forward to, because that's when I can kind of lay out what that game means and also feed off what I'm sure is I agree with you, Ollie's going to be a sort of fantastic atmosphere. And, you know, through all this, it's been a pretty bad time for everyone. Everyone's been affected, you know, in all manner of ways. But I think that it's those kind of moments and these moments that we've talked about that everyone has to try and focus on, because, you know, hockey will not be gone forever. It will return in some form. And, yeah, I think it's clear that we're all very excited to be there when it does. Guys, any final thoughts from you before we wrap up episode 2 here? They're all very happy.
We ended on a high. It's all good.
Exactly. That's what we always.
There,
that's what we always aim to do. Okay, please hit like and subscribe on the Icetime TV YouTube channel. For you will be given early notice of when these episodes go up. And of course, check out all of the content on the Icetime TV channel as well. We have highlights of all of the games from the previous season. And of course, the Devils have been showing historic games as well. And when you know it, the Devils always seem to get that win in those historic games. So they're good to go back and sink your teeth into also. But please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It will help us out greatly. Thank you very much, guys. I look forward to catching up with you all for episode 3. But for now, this has been Icetime TV Unplugged, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Joey Haddad! All the way around! Haddad with a ripper! An absolute screamer! Richardson backdoor play to Haddad! When you're missing one, Joey, you need your second one. That's unbelievable from Joey Haddad. Haddad scores! And the roof comes off to the older arena. He's Haddad, and Haddad feeds the back of the net with puck. The second, he's got a short-handed chance now, and he scores! Got a beautiful goal there for Joey Haddad. Haddad gets it on the return, and what a goal! An absolute bullet from Joey Haddad has put the Devils back in the lead. Forward, Haddad shoots and scores! Haddad! It's 27 for 27. Haddad finishes!